Welcome everyone. We're excited to share some country wisdom with you.
King Solomon had a thing or two to say about the path to wisdom. In Proverbs 4, he wrote, "Let your eyes look directly forward and your gaze be straight before you. Keep straight the path of your feet, and all your ways will be sure."
Join us now for country wisdom.
We're here on the battlefield of Chickamauga, one of the key battles in the Civil War. And the inner history nerd in me is just so excited. But I keep having to remind myself that this is not just a point of historical interest, that there were real battles going on here. People who were killed, people who were hurt. And it's a very sobering thought. But the battles didn't start with the Civil War.
You know, Jen, thousands of souls were lost here. But as you said, didn't start here. Actually, we're told from the Bible it started all the way back in heaven. Satan, who was right next to God, standing next to God, he was the one who delivered all of God's desires and it's all the angels. And one day he decided, he's looking in a mirror and thinking, you know, I can be just like God. Matter of fact, I can be better than God. I want to have my throne above God. And he began going around and speaking softly and sweetly to all the angels. You know, I could do better than God. You know, God, he doesn't love you as much as I do. And this went on and on and on until we're told there was war in heaven. Now,
which is just such an oxymoron.
Yeah, well, and what was it? It was really maybe it was a real physical battle, but I believe it was probably a war of words, a war of ideas. God's ideas versus those of the devil. And unfortunately, about a third, we're told, of all the angels followed Satan now. He's cast out of heaven, cast down here to earth, where guess what? He continues on his whole battle plan.
And places like this remind us of key battles in the world. I don't even want to add up how many wars there have been, but very often the battles are smaller. They're not spread out over all these acres. They're not public. They're battles going on in homes. And we're here today with a good friend of mine who has experienced those battles.
Yeah, why don't you share a little bit about, this is a subject, folks, this is a subject for everybody because it's going on everywhere and in many homes you never hear about it. So it's a topic we really appreciate you coming forward and sharing today.
Well, it's certainly not a topic that's easy to talk about. You know, it's one that is very personal, and usually, you know, people can look at a family and think, oh, that's a great family, because the outward appearance is always, you have to keep up appearances. A lot of times you don't know what's going on in the home. You know, just as Satan tricked the angels, he starts to begin to take over and trick through another agent of his. He starts working on your mind and manipulating your mind. And there's so many different kinds of abuse. You know, there's physical, there's spiritual, there's emotional, there's financial. The list really truly goes on. You know, growing up, I always thought there was one type of abuse, and that's physical. And, you know, if somebody hits you, well,
you know that's abuse.
You're out of there. You know that's abuse, but unfortunately that's just not the case. There are many underlying tones to that, and even physical abuse can be breaking things or smashing walls or, you know, this type of thing. And it's not talked about, unfortunately. It's not a subject that, well, it's not comfortable. Nobody wants to talk about it. The churches don't want to talk about it, you know, and that's primarily where people that are in the throngs of that hell, if you will, that's where they go to reach out to, is the pastors, the lay people of the church. You know, even so many counselors, secular and spiritual, they're not aware of this type of abuse.
Maybe go back for just a second. Give us a little backstory as far as what kind of home life did you have when you were a kid? You know, was it abusive or anything?
No, I had a wonderful home life growing up. Just a very happy home, a very spiritual home. You know, there's a difference between a religious home versus a spiritual, godly home. You know, religious can be so much for the outward experience. Spiritual is really in the heart and what goes on in the heart. And
So when you got married, I'm curious, at what point did you begin to realize that this isn't healthy, there is something wrong?
well, I cried on my honeymoon. I mean, my honeymoon was a rough honeymoon. And my first year of marriage, it was really hell. You know, I'd hear about all these people who the first year was a bliss and it was great, you
They
know.
usually say the first year is the easiest because, you know, the honeymoon lasts a while.
Right. And mine wasn't. Mine was really, it was devastating. And I knew marriage was going to be a commitment, and, you know, marriage was going to take work and all the things. I never expected to have the fairy tale like Disney portrays, but I didn't expect the devastation. And I just thought, well, you know, maybe that just wasn't what I was meant to have. And I just continued to put my whole heart and soul in all the work and seek outside counsel of what could I do to be a better wife, you know, because clearly there must be something I'm doing, you know,
Okay,
to
Jim,
cause this.
you can step out of the picture for a moment because
Okay.
you don't count in this next part. I have always thought that the burden seems to all be more on women. If you go into even a Christian bookstore, let alone a secular bookstore in their, you know, marriage section, you go into a Christian bookstore and what, 98% of the books are on how to be a better wife,
Yes.
and maybe one or two books on what you can do to be a better husband.
Yes.
And I know our human brains never get things right, but it seems like you're just told over and over, well, it's up to the wife. It's up
Yes.
to the wife. You know, if you
Yes.
keep your husband happy, everything's happy.
Yes.
I know there's that old saying, you know, if mama ain't happy, ain't nobody happy.
Yes.
But in real life, I think we get that backwards. We joke about that. I have a friend who has been through a similar experience. Nobody's experience is identical.
Right.
But I so clearly remember her saying, she kept going to the Lord, what can I do, what can I do, you know,
Yes.
trying to be a better wife. And she realized quite clearly, she felt like God just put in front of her, you have made your husband an idol. He is the God in the home. Everything is around, what does he want? What will keep him happy? How can we bend so that he's happy, so he won't lose his temper, so he
Right.
won't be critical, so
Right.
so we'll have a little peace for a while.
Right.
Okay, you can come back.
Come back.
Yeah.
Because I want to also say, it is not all men who are the abusers in a home.
Oh, no.
I grew
There
up
are
in a
some
home where,
women.
quite frankly, my mother was the first one to throw something. She got violent. She was the one who controlled people with her anger and her suicide threats. So I experienced it the other way around.
I need to ask a question though before you kick me out of
I will
the
allow
scene
you.
I was ready to. You never saw this at all prior to the wedding day or the wedding?
If I'm honest, you know, right up before the wedding, you know, God gives us an intuition, you know, and a gut, if you will. And a lot of times our intuition knows things before the eyes and the brain, you know,
can't
see
quite put
things.
words
And
to it
but you
yet.
can't quite put words to it. And it was always explained, you know, jitters and things like that. You know, it's just jitters, or, you know, just nerves. That's typical and normal. But looking back, no, it was my intuition knowing something was wrong.
You don't have to answer this. You totally pass. I may be stepping in the wrong spot, but you said even the wedding night. Can you unpack that at all, or no, we'll just keep on going?
Well, I'll just give you an example. Like in a situation of abuse, it's all about control. okay? And it's all about undermining you. And it's all about making you feel less than. You know, God says we are enough, just as we are. He loves us. He died for us right here, right now as sinners, and just as we are.
Not that he wants us to stay
Exactly.
in this horrible little state
Exactly.
we're in, but we don't have to measure up before he loves us.
That's right. We don't have to measure up. And a system of abuse, because it is straight from the devil, it's all about undermining you. You're not enough. You're not enough. You're not pretty enough. You're not thin enough. You're not good enough. You're not smart enough. You don't do enough for me, because it's all how you can serve the other person. And so, yeah, simply, you know, on the wedding night, there's just the beginning of undertones of not enough and you don't measure up. So, you know, but we've got time. You'll, you know, just in little things of already becoming a wife. And that's really where it all starts. You know, women who experience the physical abuse in that, like getting hit, like I told you, there's many forms of physical abuse, but what I always knew to be, like, they hit you, you're gone, right? But typically...
Gone meaning you'd leave.
You'd leave, right? But by the time, typically it's the men. Yes, there are certainly women that are abusive, and just as much so as the men. But by the time they go to hit you, they already have your mind. They already have you believing you could not survive without them. You're nothing without them.
You're lucky they married you, because who else would put up with you?
Right. And, you know, throughout the years, I can't tell you how many times that I was going to get left. Like, I should just leave you, nobody else will want you, you know, and then you feel like a failure there as a wife, you know, because abusers are incredibly keen and know how to pick women that will do the work for the both of you of the relationship.
Women who just naturally want to please.
They want to please. They will take all of your strengths, your kindness, your forgivingness, your dedication. They will take every one of your strengths and they will twist them around and use them against you. All of your fears, whatever you share with them, they will twist it around and use it against you. And there really is a misnomer about, well, it takes two to tango.
Now,
that's not the case in an abusive situation.
We're going to get into your story quite a bit more here, but we picked a place here that's got an interesting building that has really touched your heart. Would you mind, if you can get through it, explaining why?
So we're at a location, and early on, you know, as you can imagine, probably like a mummy suit. You know, they start at the feet. That's a good explanation for how they start entrapping your mind. You're like a mummy suit, right? And you get wrapped up until you're fully wrapped and encased and mummified. And truly, like, abuse is soul murder. They murder your soul. They have to like. And they're like an empty shell, and they suck you of all your good and make you void. And when I first got first, it's never enough. Never will be enough.
If you meet this goal of theirs, they just raise the bar.
Right. And they're playing a game with a set of rules you know nothing about, because they're constantly changing the rules. I mean, if we sat down and played a game of Uno, okay, there's spicy Uno and regular Uno, but we'd know the rules and we could play. But they're constantly changing the rules of the game. And so when God really first started opening my eyes and revealing to me, and it was quite a process of what my situation actually was, I saw a picture of a bride sitting in a house with windows that had bars on them. The house was in shambles. It was totally ruined. The outside, of course, was fine, because you have to keep up appearances, but the inside was water damaged and had burns and just in shambles, devastation. And this bride, with all her dreams for an amazing marriage and all her hard work. She was sitting at the window and dressed in her wedding gown, and she was glancing outside from inside. She was glancing outside with the bars on the window.
Janice, I'm going to interrupt you for a second. Let's take a break. We'll be right back, folks, after this break.
There are millions of women and some men who find themselves trapped in an abusive relationship each year. As you listen to Ashley's story, are you wondering if you are in an abusive situation? It may sound strange to some people, but the one who is being abused usually has the most difficulty realizing it. Delivered from the Abuser will provide you with the answers. It's brimming with resource material just for you. This is serious business, so we want you to have this information as an absolutely free download. Or if you would like to become better educated regarding abuse, please download your free copy. Go to talkingdonkeyinternational.org/set-free for your copy today. Please feel free to share with someone else.
I don't want to put you too much on the spot, but it's one thing to talk about getting sucked into a relationship that was based on manipulation, based on keeping you always questioning and off kilter. For my sake, as well as some of the viewers, can you give an example or two of what that looked like, what that really felt like?
I sure can. One instance comes to mind. I wanted to fix a really special meal, and I had gone to the store, picked out a cut of steak, made sure it was a really good cut of steak. I'm not a meat eater, didn't grow up a meat eater, grew up with a lot of allergies, and so I cook things mostly by smell and by recipe. And the recipe called for the steak to be fried. And so I was so excited about this meal, so excited to spend it, the evening together.
Because if you weren't going to eat it, you were doing it purely to please your husband.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And the recipe called for the steak to be fried, so I was frying the steak. And that was a mistake. You would have thought that I committed murder of some kind, because you absolutely do not fry a steak. Steaks are not meant to be fried. It didn't matter what the recipe said. I was wrong, and that was bad. The whole evening was ruined. The steak got thrown away, and
it was all your fault.
It was all my fault, absolutely.
I've got a feeling there's another story too, or more.
Well, there is. The first year, just many things I would do that provoked his anger, and he would punch holes in the walls of our home. We had remodeled a little mobile home, and I would find myself strategically hanging things on the walls to hide the holes. And it scared me to death, but like, okay, I made a vow, I made a commitment, this will get better. I was held on to the hope that this will get better.
But you said it, that it was never physically violent.
Well, and that's where that truly is physical violence. But what I always grew up knowing, if they hit you.
Oh, because he never actually hit you.
He never actually hit me.
You would excuse it.
Now, you mentioned one situation kind of we're talking about before sat down. Do you mind sharing that one where actually that was a hit in a way?
Yeah, sure. So we were with my family. He had a migraine headache and was sleeping. Something happened and he got woken up, and he was in a rage. Went to the car to leave, and I went to step in to talk to him, and he actually ended up slamming me in the door of the car, but that was explained away as my fault because I got in the way, even though clearly he knew I was there. But those are the things they kind of do.
So you convinced yourself it was really an accident?
That it was you were.
I believed
it was your fault for being in the wrong place.
Right. And he said it, you know, it wasn't his fault. And I mean, if you tell me something, I'm going to believe you. That's how I was raised. People, you take people at their word, you know, and you believe them. And later on, you know, later on in the years when he would rage and I would want to leave, exits would get blocked. One time my car door was opened up into the freezer of the garage so that it blocked me from being able to drive away. That is all physical abuse. If you understand the true definition of it, someone does not have to lay their hand on you. But breaking things in the home.
You went through this for 20 years, roughly 20 years?
Over 20 years.
Over 20 years. Because you thought that that's where God wanted you, is in a marriage. Marriage is forever, right? So what changed here?
Well, absolutely. I mean, I made a vow. I made a commitment. I stood in front of God and friends, and I always, you never get married on your wedding day and dream that you're going to end up in a destructive marriage. You never dream that. You never think that. And I was committed. I was going to do whatever it took. And
you went to counseling.
Oh, so many times over the years.
Where did you turn for help? Where does someone in that situation turn to for help?
Well, I turned to God, but who was my rock and my salvation. But counselors were no help, honestly. Godly counselors would just point the finger at me. I mean, even through the times of pornography, when I could finally prove there was pornography use, it was crazy because it was almost like 1,000,000 pounds had been lifted off my shoulders, because I thought, that explains what's been wrong. I can finally explain what's been wrong in our marriage.
If we can fix that, we've got a chance.
We can fix it. Hallelujah, we've got a chance. Yes, this is hard. I'm devastated, but you can't lie to me anymore about it, because I finally have the proof, and I know for a fact. That was a span where I could barely get out of bed in the mornings. Literally, I had to drag myself out of the bed.
Because pornography made you feel like you were worthless.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I was.
There is no woman can live up to what they put on camera.
Right. It's probably
catering
the
to your
ultimate.
fantasies, catering to your lower nature. And there's no way that a real wife can ever live up to that.
Absolutely.
It destroys a relationship.
It was probably the ultimate degradation that I felt as a woman. I had this little gold coin on the side of my bed, that I can do all things through Christ who gives me strength. And every morning I'd wake up and I'd look at that coin and I'd think, I can do this. I can get out of bed and I can face another day. But as time went on, that wasn't it. It wasn't pornography. And even pornography got turned around as my fault. It wasn't enough. And all the things just, it's crazy how, like I shared earlier, God is a God of, you are enough, I accept you, I love you, you're mine, I died for you. And Satan is just, you're not enough. Satan is constantly making sure you know that. And that's the whole system of destruction and abuse is the control and not being enough. And
a marriage is supposed to be the ultimate reflection of God.
Yes.
Taking the two halves, because male, female, neither one can reflect God enough by themselves.
Yes.
Together we're supposed to be stronger. We're supposed to be out there in the world reflecting God's love.
Yes.
But there's an enemy who just takes that relationship and turns it the opposite of anything godly.
Yes. And I would look at friends that were not even Christians, and I'd think, how come they're able to make their marriage work? Here I'm dying daily to God. I'm in the Word. I'm praying constantly, praying for my spouse. And how come they're able to make it work? And how come they're happy? Now, one thing that's imperative to remember is usually the abusers are very well loved by the community. They're very well loved by the people around them because they have a very different face.
They've learned to be charming.
They have a very different face that they put on for public versus the way they are at home. And unfortunately, we have pastors in Christian churches today who this is their home life, but for their congregation, they look like godly men. Remember how we talked about earlier, religion versus spirituality. You can play religion all day long, but spirituality, that's a heart issue.
Unfortunately, we have a very short time left, but what you mentioned, like our castle in behind, looks very good on the outside. Mm-hmm. Home is your castle, but there are problems on the inside. There are people watching today that have got those problems. What do you tell them? How do they get out of this situation?
It's one thing to discuss a problem, but if you can't point to a solution,
Absolutely.
to a practical solution, then it does no good to even talk about the problem.
And I hate to tell you this, you got to make it pretty short.
Pretty short. Well, lean on God, number one, but you also have to be very wise and very careful. The most dangerous time for a woman is, or a man if the roles are reversed, is when they leave. You need to seek wise, godly counsel, and I say godly because the true Word of God, not just religious counsel, but seek wise, godly counsel. And you also have to listen to your intuition. Another thing, I felt that I thought at 30-some years of age, I was getting dementia like my grandmother had, because I was really losing my mind, truly, because that's part of the whole mind control. The other thing that was incredibly life-saving is I had a dear, amazing friend who conveyed to me that what was happening, the person, the abuser, it was on purpose, by design, and intentional what he was doing. And that just blew me away, because I thought, how in the world can someone purposefully and intentionally be making me hurt and making me suffer and get gratification out of that? Really quick, the other thing is I spent 6 months studying what God really says about divorce and understanding that God values me over the sanctity of marriage.
Amen. Unfortunately, we need to have you back another time, right? This is a subject that many people are suffering through. But as you said,
more than we can imagine.
Revelation 21, I love this. And I, John, saw the holy city, the New Jerusalem, coming down from God out of heaven. God's going to change all of this. And verse 4 says, and God shall wipe away all the tears from their eyes. There shall be no more death nor crying, neither shall there be any more pain, for the former things are passed away. Thank you for coming today.
Thank you.
It's almost impossible to cover the many details of abuse in such a short episode. That's why we're offering you this companion book as an additional resource. Delivered from the Abuser will be extremely helpful if you're wondering, am I in an abusive relationship? Or would like to become better educated about abuse. This booklet offers some great information. It's a free download. Go to talkingdonkeyinternational.org/set-free for your copy.
Thank you for watching. Join us again for another exciting Country Wisdom.
See you next time.